I began with a B2 pencil. Its softness allowed me to easily vary the lines from subtle to bold. On a thick sheet of paper, I outlined the oval of the head, then drew a central vertical line to precisely place the facial features. Horizontal guidelines define the level of the eyes, nose, and lips. First, I drew the general shapes, the contours of the cheekbones, chin, and neck, to capture the anatomical proportions and character. Then I focused on the eyes, expressive, slightly tired, yet strong. Their symmetry and depth became the center of the composition. Then I moved on to the lips. I wanted to convey tension and a slight uncertainty. I outlined the hair with jagged strokes, creating a sense of movement and darkness falling over the face. I used an eraser to soften excess lines and highlight areas of highlight on the forehead, bridge of the nose, and cheekbones. The sketch turned out high contrast, with a strong emphasis on the gaze and the shape of the lips, which set the emotional core of the entire future painting. Once the contours were complete, I moved on to acrylics. I used 3 brushes, a fine one for details, a medium one for modeling the shape, and a slightly larger one for broad strokes in the background. I started with the face, using a base gray-beige undertone to create a cool, almost marbled effect. I mixed gray, white, and a touch of ochre, applying layers translucently to maintain the depth of the pencil drawing. Next, I worked on the shadows, under the cheekbones, around the eyes, and near the lips. Each layer was careful not to completely overlap the previous one, but to weave it into the texture of the skin. This created a living stone effect, a face seemingly carved from light and dark. I added slightly lighter tones to the nose and forehead to emphasize the direction of the light. Once the face took shape, I moved on to the eyes. For them, I used a fine brush. I drew the iris with concentric lines, the pupil with a deep black, and added a white highlight that brought the gaze to life. I darkened the eyelids with soft gray transitions. I painted the eyebrows thickly, confidently, almost graphically, to give the face strength and inner tension. Next came the lips. I wanted to convey a sense of both roughness and sensuality. I applied a taupe base, then worked the contour and cracks with a thin brush. I accented the space between the teeth with a black highlight to give the smile a slightly anxious, asymmetrical, and lively look. Next, I worked on the hair. It was an almost intuitive process. Using a medium brush, I applied long streaks of black paint, allowing them to flow freely and intersect. I wanted to create the impression that the hair wasn't simply framing the face in strands, but blending into the surrounding shadows. In some places, I added a translucent gray to avoid excessive heaviness and give the composition breathing space. The final step was small details. I went over the eyelashes with a thin brush, emphasized the transition from the neck to the shoulders, and added a subtle, cool glow where the skin meets the shadows. Finally, I checked the balance between light and darkness, reality and symbol. The painting acquired an unsettling harmony. The face seems to float in a space between life and dreams. Critical evaluation of the painting. What worked? A strong emotional impact. The character's gaze is piercing, as if seeing right through the viewer. The contrast between gray and black tones works beautifully, creating dramatic tension. The face is expressive and memorable, evoking personality and mystery. What could be improved? The lower neck and shoulders are a bit underdeveloped. They lack smooth transitions and depth of shadow. A few more vibrant tones could be added to the skin's subtle hints of cool blue or pale green to enhance the sense of midtones. Also, the hair could be given a bit more variety in the thickness of the brush strokes in some areas to avoid monotony of lines. What could be added? The background. Even a slight hint of texture or an abstract spot would enhance the atmosphere and separate the face from the emptiness. You can also introduce one accent color, for example, a deep reddish brown or purple, to add an emotional counterpoint. The painting's style is a blend of expressionism and Gothic symbolism with a touch of surrealism. It balances between portraiture and inner imagery, like a reflection of a person's inner world on the brink of fear and strength. Who might like it? Those who appreciate psychological depth, a dark atmosphere, emotional honesty. Artists, philosophers, and fans of expressionism, Gothic art, and art house cinema are also welcome. The painting evokes not so much admiration as it does reflection on the nature of fear, loneliness, and the strength hidden in fragility.